There's a strange silence beneath the noise of the world, a silence that feels like an ache, the quiet hum of a humanity that has forgotten its own rhythm. You can sense it when you walk through the streets, faces moving fast but eyes unfocused, bodies present but souls elsewhere. It's as if the collective heartbeat of the species has lost its tempo, and now every step echoes dissonance. Something inside us knows that this isn't how it was meant to be. We were designed to dance with creation, not to move against it. But somewhere along the way, we disconnected from the very laws that sustain harmony. And when the laws are forgotten, chaos becomes the teacher. Humanity feels lost, not because the map disappeared, but because we stopped believing the map existed. The Hermetic tradition calls this the sleep of consciousness, a state where the mind forgets that it shapes the world it inhabits. When the inner realm collapses into confusion, the outer world mirrors it faithfully. Every crisis we witness today, emotional, ecological, spiritual, is not an accident of history. It is a reflection of a mind that no longer remembers its own architecture. The principle of correspondence whispers the truth we've ignored. As within, so without. The fragmentation of the collective is the projection of a mind that has shattered its own mirror. We traded contemplation for consumption, silence for stimulation, wisdom for information. The rhythm of life, once guided by the sun, the moon, and the breath, is now ruled by algorithms and urgency. We scroll faster, but feel slower. We know more, but understand less. The modern world promised connection, yet the soul of humanity stands lonelier than ever. This isn't punishment, it's feedback. Reality is showing us the cost of our own forgetfulness. The Hermetic path doesn't accuse, it reminds. It points to the thread that still connects everything, waiting for us to remember that truth was never outside, only obscured by noise. If you look closely, beneath the anxiety of nations, beneath the fatigue of individuals, you'll find a single wound repeating itself, the loss of inner order. We no longer move in harmony with the invisible laws that govern all things. And yet, even in the midst of this great dissonance, something ancient is awakening. A quiet remembrance that existence was never chaos, only music we forgot how to hear. Humanity isn't lost, it's disoriented within its own creation. And the Hermetic way is not a new path. It's the rediscovery of the rhythm we once called divine. Once humanity lived in correspondence with the cosmos. Our ancestors did not see themselves as separate from the stars, but as extensions of their order. Every dawn was a dialogue, every storm a mirror, every harvest an answer. The Hermetic mind understood that the outer world is not an adversary, but an echo, the reflection of our inner alignment. To live meant to participate in a vast intelligence that breathes through all things. But as centuries passed, the dialogue turned into monologue. We began to speak louder than we listened. Progress became a god, and silence its first sacrifice. This disconnection did not happen in a single generation. It unfolded subtly, like a melody fading over time. The heart of man once beat in harmony with nature's pulse. Now it beats to the rhythm of machines. We've mistaken acceleration for evolution, quantity for growth, and visibility for significance. The Hermetic principle of rhythm teaches that all things move in cycles, that everything flows and returns. But when we resist the natural oscillation of life, we fracture our own harmony. The collective anxiety that haunts this age is not born from darkness. It's the symptom of resistance to the universal flow. We have forgotten how to ebb and rise with life itself. Inside each human being lives a fragment of the cosmos, a spark of the same intelligence that moves galaxies. When that spark grows dim, the world grows cold. The chaos of society is the manifestation of countless inner worlds collapsing under the same amnesia. The Hermetic truth is that there is no humanity apart from the individual. The collective is the multiplication of what each consciousness projects. To heal the world, one must first remember the self. To restore meaning, one must re-enter rhythm. This is the lost conversation of creation, The voice of the divine still speaks through every event, every emotion, every mirror we face, but most no longer recognize its language. We see random coincidence where there is sacred geometry. We see disorder where there is rebalancing. The Hermetic mind learns to read again, to perceive the hidden symmetry beneath apparent chaos. What appears as loss is, in truth, initiation. What looks like destruction is often the dismantling of illusions. Humanity is not ending. It is molting. Somewhere inside, you can feel this movement too. The discomfort of living in a world out of tune is not a curse. It's the signal that your soul still remembers harmony. Beneath the confusion, something in you is already realigning, because no matter how far the pendulum swings, it always returns to center. The sensation that humanity is lost is not a phenomenon of this century. It is the recurring amnesia of a species that has forgotten how to inhabit itself. Across time, civilizations rose and fell according to the same rhythm. They expanded when consciousness expanded, and they crumbled when inner order was abandoned. What we call the crisis of the modern world is merely the latest act of an ancient play, the inevitable descent that follows excess, the collapse that precedes remembering. Every time the collective mind identifies only with form, it severs itself from essence. And when essence is ignored, the soul begins to hunger for what cannot be fed by matter. Look closely at the symptoms of this era: the fatigue behind smiles, the anxiety hidden beneath achievements, the addiction to meaning disguised as productivity. These are not flaws of the system. They are mirrors of the collective psyche. Humanity is experiencing the echo of its own fragmentation. The principle of correspondence teaches that the outer world reflects the inner. When the collective consciousness fractures, institutions become corrupt, relationships become transactional, and even faith becomes a performance. What we witness as chaos in the world is only the shadow of a mind that is split from itself. The Hermetic initiate learns to read this shadow not as punishment, but as a teacher. The law of polarity reveals that every truth contains its opposite, that confusion itself carries the seed of clarity. The discomfort of this age is not meaningless. It is the friction required for awakening. Like metal being refined in fire, humanity is being purified by its own dissonance. The lies we built our world upon, that matter is separate from spirit, that knowledge is greater than wisdom, that control is stronger than surrender, are now collapsing under their own weight. We are being forced to remember that reality is not something to dominate, but to participate in. Inside every human being, there is a silent knowing that precedes thought, the remembrance of the cosmic order we once lived by. But the modern mind fears silence. It fills it with constant noise because silence exposes truth. Yet it is only in stillness that the laws become audible again. The principle of rhythm whispers that every swing toward chaos carries within it the movement toward harmony. We are now approaching that return. But first, the pendulum must complete its arc. That is why confusion reigns, because clarity is on its way. The Hermetic way invites us not to resist this movement, but to synchronize with it, to stop fighting the rhythm and start listening to it. The collective disconnection is not terminal, it is transitional. The human species is shedding an old identity based on separation. What feels like loss is actually space being created for a new level of awareness. As individuals awaken to the mirror principle, the illusion of otherness dissolves. Every act of awareness contributes to the rebalancing of the whole. The greatest service one can offer to humanity is not to fix the world, but to align the inner world, because the world is nothing but the reflection of consciousness multiplied, and so the Hermetic truth unfolds. The sickness of civilization is the initiation of the soul. We are not being punished. We are being invited back to coherence. The same force that shattered the mirror now compels us to rebuild it, piece by piece, reflection by reflection, until the world once again recognizes itself as light. Humanity feels lost only because it's walking through the corridor between forgetting and remembering. The task of the seeker is not to escape the labyrinth, but to remember that he built it himself and therefore holds the key. The mirror is waiting. The rhythm is still playing. The universe has not abandoned us. It is waiting for us to move in tune again. The Hermetic tradition reminds us that truth does not disappear. It becomes veiled. Humanity's sense of being lost is the echo of a forgotten dialogue between the visible and the invisible. The principle of correspondence tells us that everything we see outside is an expression of what lives within. And so, if the world seems chaotic, it is because our inner landscape has become fractured. But this revelation is not a condemnation. It's a compass. The very discomfort that pervades modern life is the signal that consciousness is attempting to reorient itself toward truth. The crisis is not the end of meaning. It is the labor of rebirth. For centuries, we have lived as though the material world were separate from the mind that perceives it. We built systems of power that denied the soul and called them civilization. We mistook complexity for progress, noise for vitality, and forgot that simplicity is the nature of wisdom. Yet now, beneath the exhaustion of modern life, a strange clarity begins to emerge. People are starting to sense that something essential has been left behind. The craving for purpose, the longing for peace, the hunger for authenticity. These are not new desires. They are the ancient memory of alignment resurfacing in the collective psyche. The Hermetic way offers not doctrine but remembrance, the rediscovery of natural law within the human heart. The principle of mentalism reveals that all is mind. This is not philosophy, it is architecture. Everything that exists, from galaxies to thoughts, arises within the same field of consciousness. When this truth is forgotten, life becomes fragmented, one part fighting the other, the mind against the heart, the self against the world. But once the seeker perceives that the universe is mental, that thought is creative and consciousness is formative, he reclaims the sacred power to harmonize the internal and external once more. The healing of humanity begins with the restoration of this understanding. Reality is not happening to us, it is happening through us. Our confusion is not random, it is feedback from the field. Every event, every challenge, every emotion is an opportunity for self-recognition. When we project fear, the world mirrors fear. When we cultivate awareness, the world responds with synchronicity. The law of correspondence becomes the bridge between chaos and coherence. The initiate does not attempt to fix the outer world directly. Instead, he tunes his own vibration until the mirror reflects harmony back. This is not escapism. It is the highest form of participation. The Hermetic path transforms responsibility into sacred practice. Imagine the collective consciousness as a shattered prism. Each fragment still refracts light, but the image is distorted. Humanity's current task is not to find the light. It was never lost, but to reassemble the prism. Every act of self-awareness, every moment of presence, every breath of truth contributes to the reformation of that cosmic mirror. The world will not heal by ideology or conquest, but by resonance. When enough minds align with the original rhythm, the symphony returns. What we call awakening is not the acquisition of new knowledge, but the remembrance of ancient harmony. It is the return to correspondence, the realization that we are both cause and effect, wave and ocean, fragment and whole. To awaken is to see the divine geometry behind every apparent accident and recognize oneself as both observer and design. Humanity's disorientation is the universe calling us back to participation. The discomfort is sacred. It is the alarm of the soul reminding us that the experiment of separation has run its course. The Hermetic truth is not hidden behind temples or texts. It vibrates in every heartbeat, in every sunrise, in every breath we take. To perceive it again, we must not seek new answers, but unlearn the noise that keeps us deaf to simplicity. What if the world's collapse is not tragedy but transformation? What if the breaking is how the whole renews itself? The seeker who contemplates this question begins to feel a subtle shift. The fear dissolves, and in its place arises reverence. Because to see through Hermetic eyes is to realize that even in confusion, the universe remains precise. The loss of meaning was only the invitation to create it again, consciously this time. If the collective wound is born from disconnection, then the cure must be remembrance, not through belief but through embodiment. The Hermetic path was never meant to be an intellectual pursuit. It is a lived alignment. The world changes not by declarations of light, but by the silent restoration of coherence in each being who remembers. To live hermetically is to allow the invisible laws to breathe through you, to let your thoughts reflect order, your words transmit harmony, and your actions radiate presence. The moment awareness returns, reality rearranges itself around that vibration. It's not magic, it's the geometry of consciousness responding to coherence. In practical terms, this begins in the smallest gestures: to pause before reacting, to observe emotion without judgment, to breathe before speaking. Each of these moments reestablishes the principle of correspondence, because when the inner world stabilizes, the outer follows. The mind that is at peace ceases to project conflict, and the environment reflects that equilibrium. This is the secret of true alchemy. Transmutation begins not with gold but with perception. You cannot change the world while remaining the same vibration that created it. As within, so without. The transformation of reality starts in the invisible dialogue between thought and field. Humanity's loss of direction can be traced to one collective illusion: the belief that life happens outside of us. This externalization has created an age of dependency and distraction, where people chase meaning in screens, possessions, and approval. But when one begins to see life as correspondence, the chase ends. The seeker realizes that every encounter, every delay, every person is a symbolic reflection of the current frequency of consciousness. The world becomes a mirror rather than a maze, and through that mirror, the path home reveals itself. The Hermetic initiate learns to translate experience as feedback. Pain is not punishment, it is instruction. The obstacle that repeats in your life is not random, it is resonance, calling for recalibration. When you begin to read the symbolic language of life, nothing is wasted. Even failure becomes sacred because it shows you the law at work. You see that the principle of polarity ensures that darkness carries light and potential, and that every descent prepares the ground for ascension. The Hermetic practice then is not to avoid suffering, but to refine awareness until meaning emerges from it. This is where modern humanity stands, between the memory of divine order and the illusion of chaos. The bridge between them is presence. The simplest act, to breathe consciously, to observe without reaction, to feel without escape, becomes an initiation. Each moment of awareness reactivates the geometry of balance. The law does not need worship, it requires participation. When you align your thoughts, words, and actions with natural rhythm, you restore a piece of the collective harmony. One conscious being, truly coherent, influences thousands unconsciously lost. That is how the great work moves through time, quietly, invisibly, inevitably. It is easy to despair when looking at the state of the world, but the Hermetic lens reveals that despair itself is an inverted form of faith in separation rather than unity. When we remember that all is mind, despair becomes energy that can be transmuted into creation. The same fire that burns can also illuminate. The same emotion that imprisons can awaken. The alchemist learns not to suppress the shadow but to refine it until it becomes light. Humanity's pain is raw material, the lead that awaits awareness to become gold. So the question is not, why is the world lost? But how can I remember enough to see it differently? Because when you remember truth even for an instant, the illusion of loss dissolves. The Hermetic initiate no longer looks for salvation in the distance. He recognizes it in the present breath. Each breath aligned with rhythm restores a fragment of the cosmic order, and as more of us remember, the frequency of the collective field shifts. The laws never left us, we simply stopped listening. This is the beginning of integration. to live as correspondence, to breathe as unity, to remember as rhythm. The moment you do, you cease to search and begin to emanate, and the world, sensing coherence once more, begins to find its center again. Humanity will rediscover purpose not through systems, but through souls who vibrate in harmony with truth. When consciousness awakens to the Hermetic rhythm, perception itself transforms into revelation. The same world that once seemed fragmented becomes a living temple, and every event a hieroglyph of the soul. In this expanded awareness, the mundane dissolves into the miraculous. A conversation becomes an initiation, a challenge becomes a rite of passage, and every human encounter becomes an alchemical mirror. You begin to see that reality was never linear. It was always cyclical, spiral, evolving in octaves of understanding. What we call progress is merely the journey of consciousness, remembering itself at deeper levels of the same truth. The Hermetic seeker learns that laws are not rules imposed from above. They are the pulse of creation itself. To align with them is to move as the cosmos moves, in balance, in reciprocity, in rhythm. The principle of vibration tells us that nothing rests, that all things are in motion. This means that even stagnation is an illusion. Beneath every moment of apparent stillness, something is always becoming. Humanity's disconnection, then, is only temporary interference in the frequency of remembrance. The music of creation continues. We simply forgot the melody. But now, in the midst of global unrest and existential fatigue, we are hearing the first notes of the next octave. A collective retuning is underway, and every conscious mind that awakens adds one more tone to the harmony being restored. Symbols return to guide the way. Fire, long misunderstood as destruction, is revealed as purification. The burning away of illusion. Water, once seen as chaos, becomes flow. The acceptance of change as sacred rhythm. Air becomes breath, the invisible bridge between worlds. And earth, the densest of the four, becomes the altar of manifestation, the place where spirit takes form. These are not metaphors of a distant past. They are reflections of the inner elements within each of us. When balanced, they mirror the order of the cosmos. When divided, they project disorder into the world. The initiate's task is to alchemize these forces, to become the philosopher's stone, where opposites unite. To live hermetically is to walk the world as symbol. Every sunrise becomes an initiation into rebirth. Every night, a descent into the subconscious to retrieve forgotten wisdom. The rhythm of day and night, inhale and exhale, creation and destruction, it all reflects the eternal dialogue between the visible and the invisible. When you perceive this pattern, life ceases to be random. You see that nothing is ever truly lost. It merely changes form. Even death, the greatest mystery, is only transmutation, consciousness changing vibration. The end of one world is the beginning of another. Humanity stands now at the threshold of remembrance. The despair of this age is the cracking of the chrysalis. The confusion is the trembling of wings before flight. The same laws that built galaxies are the ones pulsing through your veins. To awaken is to recognize that you are not separate from the order you seek. You are its expression, momentarily disguised as human. The principle of correspondence becomes more than a phrase. It becomes a heartbeat. As within, so without. As above, so below. When enough individuals embody this awareness, civilization itself changes frequency. Politics, economies, and institutions may resist, but vibration does not ask for permission. It simply resonates until dissonance dissolves. This is the quiet revolution of consciousness, not loud, not violent, but inevitable. The Hermetic truth moves silently, yet nothing can stop it. Like dawn, it arrives even when eyes are closed. So if the world seems lost, it is because the light is rising behind us, and once we turn to face it, the shadow disappears. Humanity's awakening is not a prophecy, it's a process. The Hermetic map was always here, carved into the geometry of life itself. Every principle, Every rhythm, every correspondence points to one truth. The universe is a mirror, and love is its reflection. There comes a moment in every initiation when the seeker realizes that the journey was never about finding something outside. It was about remembering what was never lost. Humanity, in its restless search for meaning, has traveled to the edges of knowledge only to discover that the center was always within. The Hermetic way does not offer escape from the world. It teaches participation in it through awareness. To walk it is to realize that the divine is not hidden in the heavens, but reflected in the eyes of all who see. What we call awakening is not an ascent, it is a return. The sense of being lost is the final veil before recognition. Like the silence that precedes dawn, it signals the end of one cycle and the birth of another. Humanity stands now in that threshold, the liminal moment between confusion and clarity, shadow and illumination. The Hermetic laws have not abandoned us. They've been patiently waiting beneath the noise, immutable, uncorrupted, eternal. And as more of us attune to them, a new resonance emerges, not imposed by ideology, but arising naturally from coherence. The principle of mentalism becomes revelation. The world changes when thought becomes aligned with truth. To remember these laws is to remember yourself. You are the microcosm in the mirror, the observer and the observed. The rhythm you feel in your heartbeat is the same rhythm that moves the tides, that guides the planets, that breathes the universe into form. To sense that connection again is to dissolve the illusion of isolation, to realize that even in solitude, you were never alone. The cosmos has always been whispering through your intuition, your dreams, your emotions. Every fragment of your life has been part of a single dialogue, waiting for your attention to translate it back into meaning. And so, the path of the modern Hermeticist is not to reject the world, but to sanctify it, to bring consciousness into form until form itself becomes luminous, to speak words that harmonize, to think thoughts that clarify, to act in ways that reflect the order of the unseen. The world does not need more believers, it needs more rememberers, those who, by embodying the law, restore the melody of creation in silence and presence. The Hermetic initiate becomes the living correspondence between heaven and earth, the bridge where light becomes life. If humanity feels lost, it is because the map is no longer drawn on paper, but within hearts. The coordinates are simple: stillness, awareness, rhythm, compassion. Walk them daily, and the labyrinth becomes a circle again, not a trap, but a mandala. The way back is not through conquest, but through coherence. Each act of awareness contributes to the re-enchantment of the world. The more we remember, the more the universe remembers itself through us, and when the last illusion of separation dissolves, we will look around and realize that the new world we sought was never elsewhere. It was this one, seen with awakened eyes. Humanity is not lost, it is returning home. The mirror is mending, the rhythm is resuming, and the light that seemed absent was only waiting for us to open our eyes. If this truth resonated, it is because you already knew it. You have not found something new, you have remembered what you are. There is a sacred stillness that follows revelation, the pause after understanding, when words lose their urgency and only presence remains. That is where this journey leads, not to an answer, but to awareness. To stand here, at the end of this reflection, is to recognize that nothing outside has changed, and yet everything feels different. The world remains what it was. Cities still move, people still rush, the noise continues, but perception has shifted. The Hermetic initiate sees the same world through a clarified lens, perceiving the invisible architecture that sustains it. This is the quiet revolution of consciousness, not the destruction of illusion, but the seeing through it. Humanity is rediscovering that creation was never random. Every movement of energy, every emotion, every coincidence participates in a grand correspondence. When one attunes to that awareness, even pain acquires symmetry, even uncertainty carries grace. The Hermetic laws, once abstract, become living forces. Rhythm guiding your breathing, vibration tuning your thoughts, polarity teaching you balance. You begin to move differently in the world, not above it, but with it. This is the restoration of harmony, the realization that consciousness is the axis around which all experiences turn. And so what does it mean to live as one who remembers? It means to let awareness precede action, to let silence sculpt speech, to let stillness shape movement. It means to no longer react blindly to the shifting winds of circumstance, but to observe, to listen, to align. The Hermetic path is not ascetic, it is participatory. It calls you to engage with life, not as an accident, but as an artist of reality. To manifest not through will alone, but through resonance. For creation in its truest form is not conquest, it is coherence. When humanity rediscovers coherence, the external world will begin to reorganize around it, not through revolution, but through resonance. Not by overthrowing systems, but by embodying truth so fully that falsehood collapses in its presence. The new civilization will not be built from ideology. It will emerge naturally from vibration. One aligned mind influences 1,000 unaligned. This is not metaphor, but physics. Every human being is an antenna of consciousness, broadcasting frequency into the collective field. And the more of us remember, the stronger the signal becomes. In that remembrance, fear dissolves. Because when you see that the same intelligence that moves the stars also moves your breath, you understand that nothing is truly out of place. You begin to trust the rhythm again. You stop resisting what is and start flowing with what wants to become. That is when humanity will no longer be lost, because it will realize that being lost was just the journey of finding itself in infinite mirrors. So breathe. Let this truth sink beneath the noise. The laws are not outside you. They are the structure of your soul. The universe does not demand your belief, only your attention. When you listen, it speaks in every form, every sound, every silence, and in that listening, you return home. If this message found you, it's because your frequency was already calling it. Remember, the map was never meant to be followed. It was meant to be awakened within. The world does not need more seekers. It needs those who have remembered what they are. You've crossed the portal. The next one is already open.